Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar live on May 3rd. Today we're going to be doing Business Startups 101 by Michelle Meza. My name is Alyssa Atkins, and I will be your webinar facilitator today. Just a quick disclaimer. The webinar provides a summary of fundamental concepts, requirements, and/or procedures within the allotted 90 minutes. The material discussed does not illustrate all possible scenarios that could be applicable. If you look at the top of your screen, you will see an icon of either a person with their hand raised or just a hand. With that icon, you can either raise hand, agree, disagree, or step away. Now your screen should look similar to the graphic here. To the bottom left, you will see a box that says Files. Here you will find today's presentation. Please feel free to download a copy for yourself. Simply click the item you would like to download, then click the arrow pointing downward, and you will be prompted to save or print the materials based on your device's permissions. The second box that states web links to houses today's survey, as well as any other links that are found throughout the presentation. Lastly, to the right of the screen, we have a chat box available. This is how you will communicate to the instructor and NLC staff. If you have any questions during the presentation, please feel free to interact by using the chat box. Simply type your message and hit enter, or click that up arrow icon button to submit. We encourage class participation, so please feel free to write in those questions or comments. Tech support issues should also be mentioned here. And with that, it is a great pleasure that I introduce Michelle Meza. Would you like to take it over? Michelle, are you there?
Yes, can you hear me? I'm just talking away.
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. Okay, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for showing up to this wonderful webinar. And we're going to dive right into Business Startups 101. So feel free to drop comments or questions in the chat and let me know. I like to make sure that this presentation, this webinar is interactive. And so anytime, you want me to clarify something or give examples or anything, just drop a line in the chat. Okay, so if everyone could quickly tell me in the chat where everyone is from, I like to learn more about the audience and find out where everyone's from. California, New York. Oh, awesome. How's the weather in California? Is it still raining a lot? Awesome, good. South Dakota, NorCal, Michigan. Montana. Okay. So we have a diverse group here. This is awesome. Very cool. Okay, guys. Give me just a second. Let me pull up my notes. Okay. I also want to mention that we'll go over this in detail when the time comes. About 3/4 through the presentation, we're going to talk about the checklist and things that you need to get started. But I do want to let you know that I provided a free business startup checklist. It's in the files. It should be at the bottom left of your screen, and also a copy of this webinar. So this webinar will discuss detailed information about how to start your business from idea to concept, to an actual business operation, and cover the skills required to develop and launch your business. And again, I just want to make sure that I give the disclaimer that I am not an attorney. Some things we will discuss today will involve some legal steps that that I suggest that you do in order to legitimize your business. And again, it also depends on your state. We have several states here. So you want to make sure that you communicate, you go back to um, the resource centers in your state as well as your attorney, and just to make sure, and your CPA, to make sure that you have all the items that are required to start a business and form a business in your particular state. So today's objectives, we will talk about starting a business from A to Z. We will cover business requirements, including business finance and compliance basics. And then third, we will assess your strengths and business plan basics. Awesome. See, one more person commented. We have a person from Flagstaff, Arizona. Awesome. I lived in Tucson for about 10 years. I don't miss monsoon season, but I definitely miss Arizona weather compared to Oklahoma weather. It seems like I don't think I can ever, even though I grew up in Oklahoma, I don't think I will ever get used to tornado season. All right, just a little bit about me. I am Choctaw Chickasaw Cherokee. I have a MBA in organizational leadership. Of course, there's a list of my certifications. I am the CEO of Luxie Coaching and Consulting, and I have been a business owner since 2010. A private consultant, I started while I was working at a W-2 job, and then I transitioned into full-time entrepreneurship. Professional experience, I have been in the industries since, gosh, it's been close to 29 years now, both business and the academic industry. So that's a little bit of my background. I actually started, fun fact about me, I actually started my first business in high school. So that's why it says serial entrepreneur since 1996. I first generation college student, college graduate. I put myself through college starting a business. So I've always had the entrepreneurial spirit. My mom used to joke when she was alive how I would just think of something, like my brain was always geared to, okay, let's start this. Let's start this business or this side hustle. And then it just, I made it happen. So I've always thought like that. Some people do, and some people need a little help. So today I will capture everything in between. Things that I've done. My passions are, of course, business, mentoring at local tribal centers. I work a lot with my tribe and other tribes near me in Oklahoma. And during COVID, I actually partnered with a lot of tribes in other states. They really needed the support from knowledgeable people, Native people who needed to help these entrepreneurs get through the COVID pandemic. Also, I'm a SCORE mentor. That's really exciting. That's a new venture for me. I'm just so fortunate. I consider those people just so much, packed full of so much knowledge, and I consider them experts. So for them to actually ask me to be one of the certified mentors at a local SCORE center is just huge. And we'll go over what SCORE is towards the end when I talk about resources. All right. And I am passionate about literacy, both financial literacy and actual making sure everyone knows how to read. I volunteered a lot on other reservations when I was in Arizona. I worked with a lot of those reservations, just making sure people know how to read, right? Because, you know, I- it's crazy to think here in the United States that, you wouldn't think that we would have so many people who are illiterate. And it was very eye-opening to me, but it was also rewarding to me just to see the transformation in people, young and old, just learning how to read. I was 12. My grandma was part of the Indian removal, and she did not know how to read. And I'm so blessed that at 12 years old, I was able to teach her how to read. So definitely passionate about that. Passionate about generational wealth, and this is why I present on the topics that I present about here at the National Center. I just believe that everyone should have the same opportunity, and it's never too late to start a business. You're never too old. You're not too young, and you don't have to know everything. You just have to get started. So let's dive into it. So I like to start out with some humor. I have a very dry sense of humor, so some of you may think, "Oh gosh, Michelle, why did you include that?" But this is actually a true story. So a lot of us, I'm in a lot of networking groups and go to different luncheons and mixers and things like that. And the topic that we always joke about is what everyone thinks an entrepreneur actually does. And so at the top, what my friends think I do, they think I work with superheroes. I just do all these cool things. And then when my mom was living, what she thought I did was just literally write things down all the time and all these boards and all these notes. What society thinks I do, of course, society looks at us as a whole, and they see the success. They see everything running smoothly, but they don't see what's behind the scenes. And then at the bottom left, what the government thinks I do, which is hilarious. There's like just an inside joke with small business owners about that. And some of you may get that. What I think I do, of course, I think I conquer the world. I solve problems. I create solutions for people. And then what I really do, which, this used to be me before I got some certifications and learned how to streamline my business. So what I really do that used to look like that. Now I help other clients go from what they really do into greatness. So if you guys could, I just want to take a poll right quick. If everyone could drop a 1 if you've never started a business, or a 2 if you are currently in business or have had a business in the past. 1, 2, 1, 1, 1, 2, 2, 1. Oh, we've got a good mix of people here. Okay, cool. So those of you who are 2s, I would love to hear drop some knowledge throughout the presentation. Um, and of course, we're all here to be better, to do better. I'm going to talk about some things that you probably didn't know, and definitely some things that you'll definitely want to take and execute. Awesome. Thank you guys for participating. So the next thing I want to talk about is, what is your why? Now, when I first started into this journey of entrepreneurship, I really didn't think about my why, but I did know, I quickly figured out, especially when I was younger, that I didn't know everything. And then it wasn't until I ran into issues or a problem, then I really figured out, like, oh wow, I don't know everything. I need to go search for a mentor. So I thankfully, I grabbed some mentors early in my career and earlier into this journey of entrepreneurship, and I took in everything that they told me. If I had questions, they were always there to support me, or they would, correct me if I thought that, my ego was leading a little bit instead of my humility. They would check me, they would put me in check, and they would just keep me in alignment with what I was meant to do. But it wasn't until a few years ago, I want to say about 5 years ago, one of my coaches in self-development, I'm also a mindset and business coach, but smart coaches, smart people have coaches. So my coach a few years ago asked me this question during one of our mentoring sessions, and it really, like, I had to come back and I had to do some soul searching, because it kind of, especially when COVID hit, it made total sense for me that if you didn't know your why before COVID, you really needed to know it post COVID. And so I did a deep dive, and this question literally transformed my life, and it transformed my business. So my question for you is, what is your why? Why are you showing up today? So if you know your why, feel free to drop it in the comments. If not, that's fine. You may not, you don't have to have the answer today, but I do encourage you to really think about, what is your why? Why do you want to start a business? Is it to solve a problem in your community? Is there a product out there or a service out there that you've struggled with and that you really needed, but nothing was there? And so all of those things really they give you some insight on which direction that you need to go. And so that's how it transformed my business to where it is today, is because I asked myself this question and I was able to answer it. All right. Okay, so I want to read some comments here. My why: to fill the gap of home ownership financing for tribal members in New York. Oh my goodness, Retha, this is so amazing. I love that. And, one of the businesses I actually started, I just want to give you a backstory here that won't take long, is I started a business out of a necessity back in 2000. When was that? 2012. Actually, yeah, it was between 2010 and 2012. 2010, I had started it and I didn't really take it seriously, but 2012 it turned into a necessity. And I started a clothing company, and it started out, like I grew up um, with basically nothing, and my mom had to make my clothes. She sewed, she made all of my clothes. She took scraps and she made beautiful clothes out of it. She was just a really good seamstress. And so she had passed down that gift to me. Of course, I really didn't appreciate it until I had to. So it started off with, my husband at the time not giving me money for clothes. And I share this with y'all today because, it's important as an entrepreneur to be vulnerable to the world, to society. We've got to break down these norms about not being real and authentic with people, because your target customers will see right through if you're, truthful, if you're authentic or not. And that's really how you connect the message and tie in your customers with your product or service. And so one of my daughters grew really fast. She hit a growth spurt, outgrew all of her clothes. So I needed to make a birthday outfit for her. And then the other one had a dance recital. And of course, I needed to make a costume for her. And so I got my stuff out, my needle and thread, my mom's sewing machine that was my grandma's when she was alive, that my mom inherited. And so I got busy, and it started off, I didn't take it seriously at first. I got a lot of compliments, but then people started asking where I got this. And with the encouragement of my community that I served at the time, they really encouraged me to turn it into a business. And so that went really well. I was picked up by a couple huge retailers, did really well, sold out within a few minutes. But then I ran into a huge growing pain, and that is access to capital, because I had to make all of the clothing up front before someone would turn in the purchase order. So I had to front all that money. And two, I didn't have a place to store, so I didn't have distribution channels set up. And like I said, I wasn't planning on it taking off like this, and so I was not prepared. So that was a huge lesson that I learned back then. But also, I ended up having to, you know, turn a lot of buyers down, because once I hit my clothing hit the runway in New York and on the West Coast in LA, that's when it got really rough. Like, okay, well, I couldn't find anyone to lend me money. um, didn't understand how credit worked. I didn't understand how that part of financing worked. And so I was in trouble, and it was it wasn't a failure, but it was definitely a learning lesson. But how I took that lesson is, gosh, how many people go through this? How many small business owners have the same challenges I do? And so I was on a mission for a solid 8 months to talk to every organization, every community, especially the Native and Indigenous communities, and really ask that question, like, do you have access to capital? And the answer that I kept getting repeatedly is no. That's why I can't grow my business, or that's why I didn't pursue my business full time, or so all of these people's hopes and dreams were either put on hold or they were crushed, all because they didn't have access to capital. And so I started another business. Um, And that was a loan brokerage, a business loan brokerage, because I knew how to contact and communicate to people what the needs were. So I wanted to be their voice, and also my own voice. And of course, entrepreneurs, we are great at solving problems. And instead of contributing to the problem or just saying, oh, well, it didn't work out and just ignoring it, I wanted to change. I wanted the change. And, my mom had told me growing up, if you want change, you have to be the change. And that's when I got to work. So I had partnered with the SBA at that time. This was before COVID, about 2 years before COVID. They were working on this initiative about helping out the Native communities, Native-owned businesses, the federal contracting agencies, the large agencies were pushing 8A certification and all of these things. And so I started with, business owners in Oklahoma. I partnered. I got in front of everyone I could who had access to those other small business owners, and I was able to help them qualify and look at these things that we're going to dive into today, to really set them up to make sure that their businesses had everything, like all, the checklist, everything that's on the checklist, like all that stuff, to make sure that they had what they needed before they were able to present to get capital. And then, of course, COVID hit, and most of my lenders were backed by the SBA. And of course, that, everything was just at a halt. But I'm saying all that to say this: I applaud you, Retha, for knowing your why and wanting to close this gap, because just as a single mom, I'm a single mom. I've been a single mom for 11 years, and it took me 8 years to buy my first home. And I know that doesn't really sound like a big deal, but it was a huge deal. It was a huge deal to my daughters. It was a huge deal to me because, I live most of my time that I've been back in Oklahoma and grew up in Oklahoma. We have a lot of rural communities, and we just don't have access to the same as these metro cities, especially tribal members in the northern states and New York. So I commend you for that. Um, and Cheryl said, help and educate my people. Absolutely. I live for this. This is why I'm on here on these webinars. I want to make sure that I take this knowledge and not be the gatekeeper. I want to transform our communities and make our communities stronger like they once were. Okay, yes, Retha, thanks. Looking to do a CDFI. Absolutely. I have been part of the Native American caucus here in Oklahoma. So I've been in front of the governor. I've worked with all of our chiefs in our state, and we have been in front and center, um, telling our, demanding our needs rather, to make sure that we have access to these funds. So there are actually more and more CDFIs being developed. And what that is just those funds are set up, are dispersed through different agencies. And those particular funds are set aside for people like you and I, like all of us on this call, on this webinar, to make sure that we have access to the same opportunities, the same funds as you would if you were to walk into a bank. And so even a lot of our tribes are creating their own banks, which is amazing. I know the Chickasaws here in Oklahoma have really pushed just getting some type of, well, they have a bank and they're working with other locations to make sure that we all have access, and especially their people, their citizens, they have access to funds. Ashley says, my why is because I'm a mother of four girls. Oh, I have all girls too. I also just want to show my girls something different that we do not see much of being on the reservation. Absolutely, Ashley. I commend you for that. I did a lot of work on the reservations in the Southwest, and you saw lots of things. You saw lots of things that aren't on the news, that our elders and our people don't talk about. And just to see the advancement since then, this I would, gosh, I've been volunteering for how long has that been? Probably the last 20 years. And, the first 10 years of that, it was really rough. The women and children, it's like they were forgotten about. It was hard for the men on the res, to find work, to get the access they need, without depending solely on the government. And I grew up as one of those kids. I just remember my mom many times having to depend on commodities and different things like that just to feed us. And I'm the youngest of four, so I get what you're saying. And actually, that's why I do what I do, because I did not want to repeat the cycles that my particular family have gone through, and I wanted to break these generational cycles. So I commend you for that. And I have two girls as well. No banks that lend in New York. Absolutely, yeah. I've worked a lot with the SBA, Retha, on getting lending up there actually. So yeah, I know that I don't know if you guys have heard about RES. I'm sure most of you have, um, through the National Center. We have a big summit every year, and we just had it in Las Vegas. And I know for the last 3 years, I made sure that I was in those meetings to where um, I was very vocal about getting lending in these every state. We should not have a state that our tribal members and our tribes can't have access to funds. I think that's ridiculous. And we now, since the changeover of the leadership in the last couple of years, we actually had the main person who is over those programs, and I know that she's been working tirelessly to help us, and she's actually heard us. And I've seen a lot of changes come through the SBA, and you guys will definitely see within the next 3 years the changes that are being made. So they are listening to us, they are hearing us, and they are figuring out ways to meet our needs. So absolutely, especially with tribal housing, that is so critical. Samantha says, looking to get away from Western medicine and use a holistic and spiritual approach with massage to better do for my community as an alternative to Western medicine that may not be needed, and finally able to pursue my dreams in healing. I love that. So, my mom just out of the blue became sick 5 years or 6 years ago. She's been gone five, just sick out of the blue. And, we depended on Indian Health Service. I grew up with it. That's pretty much, all we had for a long time here in Oklahoma. And then when these other medical groups started popping up, it was all just Western medicine. And that's just not what my family, we're not completely traditional, but I mean, my grandma passed down some, just tribal medicine and things like that. I had a great uncle who was a medicine man. So, not completely, traditional, but, we in most cases, the access to some of those things that we needed to still practice in those ways were limited. They were available in other states, but not really in Oklahoma. And so we had to depend on Western medicine. Well, moving forward, my mom got sick out of the blue. Of course, didn't find out till it was too late. And I had to use Western medicine, but that actually woke me up and really changed my thought process. And so we definitely need more holistic and spiritual healers. So I commend you for going after that. I actually have a couple clients who are massage therapists who opened up their practices. One was actually on the reservation, and another one, of course, nearby. But she does serve a lot of tribal members. So good job. All right, discovering your why. So transitioning from an employee to entrepreneur. So if you are an employee who wants to or is in the process of transitioning into an entrepreneur, if you could drop a 3 down in the comments, I want to see where we're at here. Three, awesome. Two, can you repeat the question? Yes. So if you are a current employee somewhere and you either want to transition into full-time entrepreneurship or you're in the process of it, drop a 3 in the comments. Oh, wow. Oh, this is so exciting. So this is where I geek out a little bit. I get so excited when I see this. I love asking this question, and then this just ignites a spark in people. I just love it. Thank you for repeating. You are welcome. And I apologize, my sinuses. I'm battling I'm at the end of a sinus infection, so I probably don't sound clear sometimes. So I do apologize. So if you guys can't understand me or understand my accent, please ask me to repeat something. All right, threes, lots of threes. Oh, we've got some exclamation points. I love it. Okay, this is exciting. So this is what I did. Now, being a single mom, I did not expect, nobody expects to become a single parent. So my dream was on hold a little bit. So I had to hang in there just a few more years. But after COVID, COVID really reset a lot of us. I know a lot of us either had COVID or experienced loss of family members or people we know. I know in the community in my hometown, we lost about a quarter of our population, and a lot of it was due to just previous pre-existing health reasons or access to medical care that they needed in time. Um, but what it did is it really just kind of reset me, and that's when I made the decision, because I've always, been a single mom. It was really hard to um, to not depend on that biweekly or that monthly paycheck, right? And but COVID kind of reset that and made me realize, and even having COVID, I mine was all respiratory, so I should have been in the hospital, but I was just stubborn and stuck it out. But it allowed me time to rest and think, what really matters the most to us, and if I wanted to continue to live in the system to where I had to depend on other people, or if I wanted to pursue my dreams. And so I wanted to set that example for my children, my girls. And that's, of course, I got a plan together. And part of what we're going to talk about today is developing that game plan. Everyone needs a game plan. And maybe some of you who didn't comment three, maybe you have no desire to, maybe you have good retirement and things like that. But at the time, I did not. And I knew that I had to create my future and plan for my future. And just like I said before, just getting out of that generational cycle that my family had been in. And so I made the decision to go full time, and I haven't looked back. And it's because I had a plan in place. Everybody always asks me, Michelle, I know you're knowledgeable about this and that. I'm knowledgeable too, but I just can't seem to make it work. My answer to that is you have to have a strategy. You have to have a plan in place and know when the right time is. And you will know that time. You will feel it. It'll show in your finances. It'll just, everything will align if you stick to your plan. So people are looking for freedom of bad managers, negative work environments, company cultures, financial freedom, retirement options, flexible schedules, and freedom of time. So, everyone, I think, is at the point to where they want something different. And maybe that's you today. Maybe that none of this applies to you, what we've talked about, but maybe you just want something different, and that's why you want to go into something else. So let's talk about the Great Resignation. Now, I know this Great Resignation happened last year, but it still applies, and that's why I want to talk about it. Because it seemed like COVID, like I said, just kind of reset everyone. And all of a sudden, we had some time to really figure out, like, oh gosh, you know what? I didn't realize I was in this type of work environment and I don't like it. Or maybe, you saw more of your family and you didn't realize the stress or the tolls that your job was taking out and on you, and how it was affecting your family. And so with this, for me, that's what I saw during COVID, because I had my kids at home. At the time, my daughter was in high school, my oldest, and my youngest, of course, was in elementary school. And I saw them more. And I just realized, like, how much time, excuse me, that I lost with them. And as a single mom, as any mom or dad, um, that just kind of hits you differently. And I wanted to make sure that I didn't experience that again. And that's what helped me kind of reset myself. Now, we went from the great resignation to, at the beginning of this year, what we called quiet quitting. For whatever reason, people were just tired of putting up with things. But I don't think really, I've done a lot of research in this, in the workforce over the last 2 years. And from all of my polls that I've taken from organizations, from my clients, from their teams, and things like that, um, people just wanted more out of life. It wasn't really necessarily a bad work environment or a bad manager. They just wanted more freedom of time. They wanted more freedom to be able to not have to stress about making their child's play during their lunch hour. Or maybe they're tired of all the debt that they've acquired, or they wanted to not take a loan out for Christmas, or whatever it is. People have realized, and they figured out like what's important and what's not important. So I want to share this quote from Crazy Horse. I see a time of 7 generations when all the colors of mankind will gather under the sacred tree of life, and the whole earth will become one circle again. Now, I've heard this quote. Even in college, I've done a lot of reports and things over our former chiefs, our historically. And this quote just really resonates with me, especially when I talk about generational wealth and really setting your families up for success, yourselves. My goal is to leave a legacy, and that's part of my why. I want to make sure that my legacy lives on long after I've walked on from this earth. And so, you know, the visions of our elders, this really just resonates with me because I remember my elders talking about this growing up. I had a cousin, a first cousin. She was she was a councilwoman for our tribe, and she was so active in the communities. And I just remember, on my 18th birthday, she told me, Michelle, it's time that you follow me. People gravitate to you, and you need to get out to your community and see what I'm seeing. And I'm telling you, that was such a great experience. So when I think of this quote, I think of my cousin, and I think about all of the wisdom that she dropped into me. And it's just so relieving to know, like, all of those things that I took in from her, I'm able to pass down to my children. Now let's talk about statistics. This was actually, I actually, this number came from last year's BIA report, from the BIA, and I wanted to check last month to see if anything had changed. And this is kind of holding steady about the impact of Native businesses in our U.S. economy, and this is just so exciting. When I first saw this statistic last year, I was blown away because I've been very active in our communities, and just partnering with the SBA on a national level. Um, you don't really see your impact until, especially as a business owner, right? You just think about what's in your bank account. You think about um, how you serve your clients and the impact that they're making, and then the impact that you have directly on your team. But when you're thinking about, like, just from a big picture standpoint, 33 plus billion is a whole lot of native owned businesses. And the number for just small businesses in general, much more than this, but just I'm talking about our individual Native American owned businesses impact. And that's amazing. So what's more exciting about this is not only do we contribute to our US economy, our state and local economies, but we employ over 200,000 people. So think of those families that we are able to take care of. And just owning a business, my business model, I make sure that I hire Native Americans first. I give Indian preference to them, because again, my goal is to leave a legacy for my children, my family, but also to make a difference in my community. And that's one of my core values within my company. is I want to make sure I serve my communities and serve them well. And part of how you serve them, of course, is to get them access to housing, to get them jobs so they can afford that housing and build up, their families and take care of their families. And as my grandma used to say, she used to tell me, Michelle, if you take care of others, it will take care of you. The Creator will take care of you. Just make sure that you leave things and you leave people better than you found them. And I've always carried that with me from a little girl. All right, next slide. Next thing I want to talk about is mindset. A lot of people don't talk about mindset. Over COVID, I picked up a couple certifications. I was actually, I was on a journey of 3 years of just healing, trauma from my bad decisions, or maybe generational trauma, trauma in my family. And I just was tired of being tired. And so I began working on my mindset. And during COVID, it just impacted me so much. It made such a difference that the common thread that I saw with my clients and just talking to other business owners is their mindsets. They were often stuck. They had mental blocks, negative thought processes, and it was directly affecting their teams and their businesses, and of course their families. And so I want to change that norm of not talking about mindset. And so I have this Navajo proverb: thoughts are like arrows. Once released, they strike their mark. Guard them well, or one day you may be your own victim. I was talking recently with a college classmate of mine. She was actually, we've stayed friends throughout the years, and she's Navajo, and she went back to her nation, her reservation after college. And we had a discussion on mindset, and I had told her that I was going to share this quote, this proverb, and she was like, absolutely. She said, she said, I remember my dad talking about, well, actually all the elders, when they were gathered around um, making fry bread or whatever they were doing, they were talking about the importance of the mind and the thoughts, and they are like arrows. And so you have to check those arrows before they're released and figure out, okay, is this releasing good into the world and returning good back to me, or is it, you know, um, throwing bad things out there and then in return coming back to me? And, as I get older, I realize that how important mindset is, and what you put out there does come back to you. And it has come back to me, good and bad, right? So, of course, I learned from when I was younger, and I wanted to make sure that I turned those things around. So, mindset is everything. Changing your mindset isn't an easy thing. It's mainly done through coaching exercises, your routine, looking at your daily habits, and daily affirmations, just to name a few. So, I started with affirmations because I knew that I needed the daily maintenance. Sometimes I woke up, you know, as a single mom, I still face all kinds of things, but the difference is I have the tools now to overcome those things and not let it affect me or my business or my kids. So I'm a certified mind coach, and if you have any questions that you want to explore ways to change your mindset, please reach out to me. My contact info will be available at the end of this presentation. All right, so let's talk about planning your business. So we talked about the mindset. We talked about your why. Now we're getting into the nuts and bolts of this webinar. So planning your business. So it starts with the idea, right? What is your idea? Does it solve a problem? Is it something nobody has done? Or is it what others are doing, but you have a specific feature that changes course of how that product or service is out there and available? So it starts with an idea. filters into a concept, then you dive deep into brainstorming how you can make this happen, turning it into a business, turning that concept, if it's a product, thinking about how it's made, where to get the prototype and how to fund it and things like that. Or if it's a service, what do the solutions look like? What does your message look like? And so it starts with an idea concept. You develop a business plan. You research your target market. You research your competition. And then you choose what products or services to sell. So then the work comes, of course. The work, what I mean is the business plan, the steps that you take to get this launched. And then after all the hard work comes the fruit of your labor, which is success. And that's the fun part, right? But it doesn't happen overnight. And I've seen over the years, a lot of business people, business owners, entrepreneurs, they start off really strong, really passionate, and then they have a setback or a roadblock or an obstacle, and they just walk away from their dreams. But I want to encourage you today, don't give up on your dreams. A delay is not a denial. And even though I was a single mom for all those years, I knew that one day that my day would come to where I wouldn't have to work, you know, endlessly. I wouldn't have to go to a W-2 job and then come home and work my business and take care of kids. And so now I'm able to see the fruits of my hard labor, and it's exciting. It didn't happen for me overnight, but I knew that if I kept going, if I didn't quit, that I knew that I would see the light at the end of the tunnel. I want to share a quote. Zig Ziglar, I really love his principles, and it's really helped me as a business owner. It helps me, especially with my goals, like goal setting. His strategies and things. If you haven't read any of his books, I encourage you to look up his foundation or go into Amazon and grab those books. I want to share a quote with you. Time can be an ally or an enemy. What it becomes depends entirely upon you, your goals, and your determination to use every available minute. And that's what I knew that I wanted to do until my dreams were put into fruition. Is I wanted to make every minute count. And for those of you who are are beginning, or you're in the middle of this process and transitioning from an employee to an entrepreneur, every available minute, we have the same 24 hours in a day. Of course, you need rest, but when you're awake, make every minute count. Have a plan together. I suggest time blocking, time management. It allows you to either transition your side hustle into a full-time business, or it allows you to balance and create healthy habits during the transition to take the necessary steps towards your dream. And that's where I started. I looked at my schedule and I wanted to figure out, okay, look, I have X amount of hours in the day. A chunk of my day is working for someone else, but what does my time look like when I'm not? How do I balance my family uh, and working a business? And in the beginning, I had to put a lot of work in it to get it launched, to get all this stuff done until I could hire a team of people to help me. It wasn't easy, but it's progress over perfection. That's if when somebody asks me how I met my goals and how I made every minute count, it's I looked at every day as progress instead of beating myself up. If I had a to-do list of 20 things that day or that week, and I only got 2 accomplished because I had a gymnastics practice or a track meet to go to, or a dance practice, or I was just exhausted from the work week, I didn't beat myself up. And that's what I was talking earlier about mindset. You have to set your mind to something, and be flexible when something isn't what you thought it would be. So let's talk about business requirements. So this goes into more of the legal steps that you need. And again, I just want to tell you, I'm not a CPA. I'm not an attorney. However, I've been through this process, and you need to make sure that you educate yourself on your state laws, on your reservation laws, tribal laws, anything that whatever route you decide to go to start your business, you want to make sure that you set it up properly. And don't be afraid to reach out to CPAs and attorneys, because they do it every day. They're knowledgeable and they can help you succeed. So first, you need to choose your legal structure. Now, I know that some of you have already been through this, so be patient with me as I talk about this. Or if you want to just make sure that you have your check and balances, and that's what I did. When I had attended a couple seminars just to make sure that I was on track for my business, and make sure. And then I realized that I had some gaps that I had to close. So first, you need to figure out your legal structure, and then you need to register your business name through your state's. Most of our states are set up through the Secretary of State. I know some states, I know some of you on here, I think it's called Commerce or some type of entity that you have to go through the state. You want to make sure you do this first. You have to do a name search, to make sure that that you're not using someone else's name, because that's the last thing you want to do, is throw a name on a document or on a product, and then someone contact you saying, hey, I have a copyright on that. You have to take all your stuff down. This actually happened to a really close friend of mine. He had a really successful company, has actually been in business for a long time, and his name was similar, but he had some gaps in there. He didn't realize it until he went nationwide with his company, and then someone stopped him in his tracks. So he had to completely do a name change and rebrand all of his stuff, and it was such a nightmare. He was very discouraged, but I commend him. He stuck through it because he had worked all those years and built up such a client base. But his clients were very understanding. He was very transparent with them and honest with them. And honesty goes a long way when you communicate things to people and the reason for the change. It just makes things a lot better. And the second part of that is applying for your EIN. And EIN is an employer identification number, also known as a tax ID number. Now, a lot of people, depending on your state, I know for Oklahoma, like if you are a single member, let's say you apply for your limited liability company, and we'll go over that here in a minute. If you are a single member, you don't have anyone else like a board or anything, any other partners or anything, you're considered as a single member LLC, which, tax wise, it depends, but most of them, you get hit with the self-employment tax here in Oklahoma. And in some cases, depending on the CPA you use, they tell you have to use your social. I recommend doing them separately. I have all of my stuff separated. So my personal credit, my social security number is completely separate from my business stuff. And at the end of the day, it makes things so much easier. I know that, especially for your CPA, it's not a headache for them. So they don't have to go through and separate your personal stuff from your business stuff. And applying for your EIN, don't let people, unless they are going to set up all of your documents and they charge you a fee for that. The EIN can be done through the IRS website, irs.gov, and it can be done within minutes. So within minutes, you follow the information. Now it's electronically. You don't have to do it by form anymore, by paper form. You can do it electronically, and within 24 to 48 hours, most of the time they're really fast since it's computer generated, but they'll send you an email. And you want to make sure that you save the email and you print out the letter or store the letter where you can access it, because you will actually, especially the first year in business or the first year of formation, like legal formation, you will need that letter and that number quite a bit. So you will need to download the W-9 form. This form is required in order for clients to process payment to your business. So, for example, if you are a consultant and you want to contract out to with your tribe or with other organizations, they will ask you to submit a W-9. So just to give you the difference, like when you apply, like as an employer, and when you go for a job and you get a job as an employee, they will have you fill out a W-4 form, and that's just with your personal information. So the W-9 is the business form of that W-4. So that gives you an example of the difference. One page, it's really easy. That's where you include your EIN. Again, on this form, I know it's small. I just wanted to give you like a visual of what it is, but you can go to the IRS website and type in W-9 and actually get this form. You want to make sure you keep this form updated with your business information every year, because if you let's say you win a multi-year contract, or you go back to the same corporation or tribe or whoever it is and they request a W-9 form, they will actually request an updated W-9 every year. So this is just a good form to save and keep. And it does have a place for your social or your EIN, but again, I prefer using your EIN for everything business. The next thing I have on the screen is the operations agreement. And the operations agreement or operating agreement is a legal document that is required in order to open a business checking account. Now, with the passing of the Patriot Act and all those additional banking laws that they have nowadays, they require an operating agreement, a completed operating agreement. And basically what that is, again, I just threw a snapshot up here. You can go through your attorney. I also go through a company I'm with. It's called PPLSI, and those forms are included in my plan, my monthly plan, but you can get it drafted up, and it just basically says, who is the owner, who manages that company, what is the company information, the address, the EIN, and things like that, and then what percentage you own. And that's just a document stating who manages the operations. And obviously, if you go into a partnership or anything, that may look differently, and that's where you want to go back to your attorney and consult an attorney, and they can either draft it for you or look over what you've drafted. Now, I know that they have templates out there on the internet. Please don't go to Google for things like that. Every state is different, and every operating agreement in every state is not the same. So if you just Google a random operating agreement and use that template, it may not cover you in that particular state you're in. All right, I have a question from Candace. Is this all something we can do through your services? Yes, I actually, a little over half of my clients are actually startups. So I talk about startups a lot. I give lots of presentations, and I actually help a lot of clients who are startups. So absolutely reach out to me, depending on what stage you're at. And yes, I will definitely be able to help you with this. Business checking. So research local banks to determine what's best for you and your business. Now, I get a lot of questions on business checking, and it really depends, honestly, on what your it's kind of like your personal checking, like what type of business you have, how often are you going to be using them, and like how often you write checks or anything like that. So it really depends on your needs as a business owner and as your business. I prefer local banks. I mean, yeah, there are chains. It really depends on, like, again, how often you use them. But whatever you do, I would definitely make sure, like in your research, you just want to make sure if they're favorable to small, do they cater to small businesses? Some banks actually have minority opportunities, like they have special programs for Native owners, small businesses, and things like that. I know, especially since COVID kind of transformed the banking industry as well, a lot of banks are more lenient, and they're more helpful towards small businesses. So it used to just be certain banks you go to. I like credit unions. I've developed a lot of relationships with them. It's just easier to deal with a local bank than it is just a big chain for me personally. I also look at lending side. Do they have a commercial lending department? What do those requirements look like? If it's going to be such just a rigorous process just to get a working capital loan, then maybe that's not the bank that you want. A lot of these banks, most of them have the same type of regulations, because that's a federal thing that they have to comply with. But some banks are just easier to work with than others. I'm not bashing any banks, but just some are just easier to work with as a small business owner than others. And they offer a lot of opportunities. I'm more of a bootstrap type of, when I help clients, I use bootstrap methods, which means, I don't believe in paying a lot. I'd look at it as you have a minimal budget, because most people when they start businesses, they don't have the money set aside for it to buy all these bells and whistles and all these software programs and things that they need to fully automate their businesses at first. So, I prefer spending minimal amount and try to look for free things versus having to pay, high price ticket on the things that you can use for free until your business is there financially. The second part of that is a general liability insurance required doing business with anyone. Absolutely. Most states require general liability insurance. And that is basically protecting you. Now, I get a lot of questions on this. So, a lot of consultants come to me, or let's say you're a graphic designer and you have a graphic design company. Do I need general liability? That's expensive, Michelle. Well, it's not really expensive if you look at it, as far as your needs and covering yourself. It's kind of like car insurance, right? We don't like to pay car insurance, but you want to make sure you have it in case you need it. And it's always good once a year to shop around to make sure that, because rates change depending on, businesses and lawsuits in your area or your state. State regulations change on insurance. I know in the last 5 years, Oklahoma has really done a transformation in how they cover or require out of small businesses. So to answer the question, for that graphic designer who works out of their home, they don't actually lease or own a building to actually go to for the office. They have different types of policies. For me, I'm a consultant. I have general liability insurance just because some of the consulting stuff that I do. But I also have what is called an errors and omissions policy, or a an insurance rider, and that just covers it just covers me as far as those types of services I offer. So again, you want to make sure that you talk to a knowledgeable insurance agent. So I've just mentioned three key people you want to interview and make sure you're connected with: an attorney, a CPA, and now a commercial insurance agent. They do have different policies that are national insurance companies. But for me, I'm big on relationships. And so I prefer local people. That way I can call Joe down here at, Native Insurance of Oklahoma, and I know that he can help me. He knows me. He knows my business. He knows my needs, and he can take care of it. And also, I owned a cleaning company, and, you know, I'm thankful that I had a knowledgeable insurance agent, because I was paying a whole lot of money every month on the type of liability insurance I needed. But then when I got into commercial cleaning, like for tribal projects and stuff, he was like, "Hey, you can only get it by the project or whatever." And I'm like, "What? I don't have to pay for this monthly if I'm not bidding on those type of projects this year?" And he said, "Yes." So again, that's an example of why having a local knowledgeable insurance agent works for me. And so I encourage everyone to do that. business plan basics. So let's get into this a little bit. So I put a note on here, includes a marketing plan. Most of you, I'm sure you know what a business plan is and what a marketing plan is, but a lot of people don't. They think that they are one and the same thing, and your marketing plan is not the same as your business plan. So what is a business plan and why do you need it? Well, let me tell you why you need it. It's a game plan. Remember at the beginning of this webinar, I mentioned that you need a game plan. So this business plan should be a document that you have access to, and it's a working document. Yes, you want to create um, a finished product, of course, of that plan, but it's something that you need to go throughout the year. I keep mine on my desktop because I know I need to access it. I look at it every time there's growth or a change in my business, and I also make sure every 6 months at least that it's updated, because what if I run into a project or like an opportunity for a bid and I need access to capital? Well, in order to go in front of a commercial loan officer, they ask for a business plan. So there's different types of business plans. There's a traditional business plan, which that has every single aspect of your business. It's at least 10 pages long. Or there's other plan types called a lean plan. So depending on your type of business, and there's plenty of resources out there. I know the SBA they have a section on their website dedicated to business plans. And I think they actually have a template that you can use, and you just pick your industry and the type of business you have, and then it'll give you what you need, the segments that you need to include in your business plan. As I mentioned a few minutes ago, it's required to to deal with the bank. Anytime you need a bank loan for your business, access to capital, equipment purchase, real estate purchase, whatever it is, you need that business plan, because they need to know your plan for forecasting your sales. So how much estimated sales that you plan on making for your business that year, and future projections, past performance, things like that. Especially if you deal with city, state, and federal organizations and projects, you want to make sure that you have all these things in place. Now, another reason why you need a business plan, because in that business plan, I did mention marketing plans. So within that, it speaks to your brand. It shows people, it shows those bankers and investors or whoever you present the business plan to, that you are serious, that you have a legitimate business. It creates a solid brand, a brand identity. You should have a logo, a digital footprint. And so digital footprint is rather new. We've had e-commerce since the .com boom. Now, 20 years ago, it seems like just yesterday. But now it's all about your digital footprint. So part of my business that I do is I have a full service digital marketing agency. And so I work with clients from startup to 3 million, $10 million clients in revenue. I work with all types of businesses to make sure that they have digital presence. Because nowadays, with the thanks to social media and Google My Business and things like that, you want to make sure that people can find you, number one, but number two, they know who you are and they know where you are. And I get a question a lot. Well, I have a brick and mortar business. Do I still need to be online? Yes, you absolutely do. Another reason to stay organized for the business plan is register your domain name for your website, set up a business email, set up an accounting software, and create social media accounts. So when you have that listed in your business, just think from a training standpoint. When you hire people to join your team, you want to make sure that they understand what your business is about. It's a good communication tool for your managers, for your executive managers who you hire. If you hire chief operating officers, chief financial officer, when you get to that level, they need to make sure that they see this plan so they can execute and just make sure that what their actions are and what they communicate to the team and the processes and the people are in alignment with your business plan. So I have a question from Dawn. When starting a business, when should you look into getting an attorney, CPA, commercial insurance agent? It seems expensive for the onset. Yes, it does at first, depending on what route you go. And I'm glad you asked, Dawn. Thank you. So I mentioned I actually found a company through my employer. It was actually an employer benefit, and it's through a company called PPLSI. I was a member for 5 years. I actually needed them for my divorce. I was dealing with some things, and I just couldn't afford the retainer. This company, I pay a monthly, it's a prepaid legal service, is what it is. But they also have a whole different sector for small businesses. They have a program called Launch. And a few years ago, I wanted to be trained in it. And so I become an associate with them. So you go through me and I work with you and I set that up. And we're in all 50 states. So that's a good thing. That is as far as an attorney standpoint, that is a cheaper alternative to go through. Now, CPAs, really, it's all about building the relationship. And I know that you probably know that, but I'm just wanting to give an example of what I did. I wanted to make sure that, I couldn't afford a CPA. I couldn't afford a big insurance policy at first, but I worked on I knew that I wanted to start a business. So, 3 to 6 months before I actually got to work on that, I got out there and I wanted to interview people because, it's a two-way street. Yes, they're asking you if, to make sure you're a good fit for them, but you want to make sure that they're a good fit for you. And a lot of these people, once you establish this relationship, they may offer you a discount or in some cases, barter with them. If, for example, I have a client who she graduated, she put herself through massage therapy school, um, and she didn't have the money to, you know, to, to get some of these things. And so she found the right people who were willing to barter services. She literally bartered a couple services that she needed to get a head start. Um, the third option is to, train yourself. Nowadays, QuickBooks has an online version to where you pay a monthly amount, and depending on the plan that you get someone um, from their corporate team who you can call them for support. I forgot what plan that is. I don't remember offhand. It's not the basic plan, but I think it's a step up. But I started with the basic plan just because I needed a software. I knew that I had to keep my book straight. So I went that route. And then when I just made sure that I set a budget and with my business, and I knew exactly how much I needed. And so I just made sure that I went out and sought out the clients to make sure I covered my overhead. And then I was able to purchase that next plan that could give me that support instead of hiring my own bookkeeper. That's, overhead that I didn't have to pay. And to make sure, it's just unbiased. It's a good checks and balance for me. I have somebody there I could, if I get stuck in the program, or hey, I didn't balance my account right, I think I forgot an invoice, or I don't see payment applied, then I could reach out to that support, and they are there. Then at the end of the year, I was able, it's just about budgeting. If I would start with a budget, if you know that, maybe bartering isn't an option for you, then start with the budget. Start putting back $10 here, $20, $25 there, and just put it back. I use the envelope method. I think one of the webinars that I did with the National Center here is, or the NLC is, we talked about the budgets. And to this day, I still use the envelope method. So every time I get payment, I set aside a certain amount and I allot it in that envelope. And I take the cash out of the bank. I really do. Like, I use that method. That's how I got out of debt when I divorced. that's how I saved for my first house. And that's what I also, I do presentations to housing, tribal housing organizations. And that's the method that I encourage for down payment and stuff like that. So hopefully that answers your question. I do use there's a couple national agencies out there that do have um, affordable commercial insurance policies. So just reach out to me, Dawn, if you have any other questions. Okay, Yvonne, when you're in your first year, how do you start your books? That is a good question. You definitely, it's important. So I'll tell you, I want you guys to learn from my mistake. Even though that I had started these businesses, I was not good at first at keeping books. I actually didn't think it was important at first until that bit me. There was an agency who needed something and I didn't have record of it. The bank did, but that wasn't what they needed. And so I quickly learned that I had to have my actual books in place. And like when I started out, I literally bought a ledger. Of course, in college I minored in accounting. And this is so funny. This is why I laugh at myself, because even though I minored in accounting, I didn't think it was important or on my top 10 list to set my books up in my business. It was so terrible. And I'm able to laugh at myself now. And hopefully, you guys are laughing at me too. But don't do that. There are affordable ways. I use a couple different programs for that are affordable. And I have a code for one if you guys are interested. It's called Honeybook. I have a code for 50% off. I also use QuickBooks too. I just like QuickBooks. It's easier. It's straightforward. There's no If there's an error, if your books, if you don't balance at the end of the month, it'll tell you before then. And that's what I like about it. And so that's how I started. I got the basic plan of QuickBooks online. I don't know how much it is now, but I think now it's like $9.99. And they have trainings on there too under the resources tab. I'm not here to promote any any companies, but I'm just telling you what works for me. It's my job, my goal, to make sure that I provide a lot of value to you guys. And again, I just use the bootstrap method. I don't want to spend a lot. So I literally got the cheapest plan of QuickBooks, and I watched all the free trainings. It's on the resources tab on QuickBooks, and that's how I set it up. And so I personally, once I taught myself how to do stuff, then I'm able to teach my clients this too. But then, I felt more empowered. And in addition to feeling empowered, I knew what was going on in my business, because I've learned that a lot of people, they have no clue what's going on in their businesses, and that's just because the lack of knowledge. They don't know how to do it. They didn't think to watch videos. Yeah, it takes a lot of sweat equity at first, right? It takes a time, but again, if you use time blocking and you schedule like 2 hours on a weekend to just learn, just get in there, watch the free videos. Nowadays, there's so much free stuff on YouTube and things like that. I don't recommend learning from TikTok, there's a lot of knowledgeable people, but just make sure that you check and verify your resources before you watch all that. All right, good questions, guys. We have about 10 minutes left. I want to make sure that I get some questions answered if you guys have any. So I'm just going to go through the rest of this, and then I'll get back to the questions. So your logo, why is it important? That's probably the $1 million question that I'm asked all the time. Do I need a logo? Yes. You don't have to spend a lot of money on it. And I design them. My team, I have a team. I've trained them to a specific way of how to. There's a whole psychology behind the branding in companies. So why is the logo important? Your smile is your logo, your personality is your business card, and the way you make others feel is your trademark. So people will take you more seriously if you have a logo. There are statistics out there, reports out there that state they've done, consumer reports, and they have proven that this is true, that this holds true. People just take you more seriously if you have a logo. And two, we don't have time to dive into the whole marketing piece of it. But just having a marketing agency, I majored in marketing in school and college, and I've studied over 25 years of the psychology behind and the science behind colors and why consumers choose certain colors. It creates brand loyalty. It creates your target customers coming back to you, using you, referring you. So it really does make a difference. So now I just want to quickly share some resources. Um, Guys, utilize your PTAC centers. I believe most of of the states have these PTAC centers, and they help you they help you figure out, especially if you're going into like the state and federal and the tribal side, they help you get prepared and prepare your business for free. They have grants and things that they apply for, and they have funds to help you set those things up. Your SCORE offices, pretty much every state at least has two, and now post COVID, they do a lot of things online, so you don't actually have to travel to a center. So these SCORE offices, it's a division of the SBA, and they're free to you, and they're the mentors there are the requirement to be a SCORE mentor is you have to have experience in business. You have to, own a business or retired from a corporation that you owned. So they check you. They do thorough checks for their mentors in order to become a mentor. So there's a whole entire process that I have to go through in order to provide mentoring to small business owners. So that's free. I know small business development centers or SBDCs. We have only one here in Oklahoma, but they service all of Oklahoma. And again, they have resources. I've partnered with them. And so, for example, they have what they call referral partners. So I'm considered a referral partner. So let's say, their clients, people come to them and they say, you know what, I want to start a business. I need help with a business plan, or I need help with a logo design or marketing plan or things like that. Then the SBDC would give them a list of the referral partners, or they would connect me as the referral partner to the client. You also want to take advantage of the Minority Business Development Agency. Now, I know this year they announced huge changes thanks to our advocacies. Those of you on the call, if you guys are involved with just being an advocate for small businesses in your state, through your tribes, nationally, we are doing it, guys. The Minority Business Development Agency, they are paying attention and they're listening. There's tons of new programs that they released just this year alone that you want to make sure you Google and look up and contact them. Local tribal small business entrepreneurship programs. I know that the tribe, Choctaw Nation here in Oklahoma, our chief had set aside funds specifically to create an entrepreneurship program. So they help with everything, just about, all the basic things. I wouldn't say everything, but at least they help you get started in an affordable way. Books out there, I recommend you guys reading some of these books to help with your mindset, to help you grow for your personal development as a business owner. Good to Great, The E-Myth, Think and Grow Rich, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, How to Win Friends and Influence People, The 10X Rule, The Closer's Survival Guide, and Dream Big, Do Bigger. So I am an author, and I forgot to mention that at the beginning. It's hard to talk about myself. I could talk about others all day long, but I wrote a book, released it this year. It's called Dream Big, Do Bigger. The ebook is available on Amazon, and my publisher's about to release the hard copy. So again, make sure you're following me on social media and to make sure to look for that hard copy. So today we discussed starting a business, the business requirements, and business plan basics. And I just want to remind you guys that life begins at the end of your comfort zone, and your greatness is limited only by the investments you make in yourself. And that's from Grant Cardone. So this is how to reach me. Again, Make sure you download the startup checklist from this webinar and also the PDF of these presentation slides. And this has my contact information on it. Do you guys have any questions? Oh, Retha says, are there funds out there to assist with feasibility studies or funds to help with surveys to support your business plan? Yes, depending on what state. I don't know if I don't recall the funds being available like on a national level, but I do know that some funds are available. I would probably reach out to your PTAC or your SCORE centers about those feasibility studies. I know before COVID in Oklahoma, we had a program that it's since gone away. It wasn't federally funded, but that program was available because I actually did a feasibility study. I took advantage of that program. I love the suggested reading. Oh, thank you so much, Juliet. I really appreciate that. I'm a book lover. I'm a lifelong learner and hardcore advocate of self-development, personal development. We need to make sure that we're better than we were yesterday. So Yvonne says, I feel like I need a checklist before I start my business. I recommend it. That's why I provided this startup checklist. And just please make sure that you guys get a copy of it. Do you all see it at the bottom left of your screen? You should be able to hover over that file and click download. I want to make sure everyone has access to that. If not, if for some reason you can't find it or you don't have access, please get a hold of me and I can also email it to you. And I provided my email on the screen. Oh, awesome. You see it. Okay. Anyone have any other questions? Yep.
Alrighty, I see people are typing. I went ahead and already launched the survey just in case if anybody would like to go ahead and take that. The information greatly helps Michelle and I to know what you would like to see in the next webinar. If there are any questions, by all means, please put them in the chat box and Michelle will answer them. Thank you very much for today's webinar, Michelle. You did an amazing job as always, and thank you for all the participants for joining us today. Our next webinar is going to be, oh, that's not the right date. Our next webinar is going to be May 5th. It's going to be Financial Wellness, How to Create Generational Wealth for You and Your Family, presented by Michelle Meza, CEO, Mindset Coach, Branding Strategist for Lexi Coaching and Consulting LLC. As always, registration is free. It will be at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central, 12 p.m. Mountain, and 11 a.m. Pacific. Feel free to access this and any other recorded webinars on our website, www.nativelearningcenter.com. We have a Kathita Webinars tab and a recorded webinar section. You can click on any one of the webinars that we have done for the past 18 months. Feel free to view them and share them with your friends and colleagues. And check out our upcoming events as well on our social media sites such as Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Snapchat. We even have a podcast titled Hope Athenga Native American Podcast. You can find that on Simplecast, Google Podcasts, Spotify, and Apple Podcasts. Once again, I want to thank Michelle. Thank you so much for presenting today, and thank you for all of our participants for joining us for today's webinar. Greatly appreciate it, and I hope everybody has a wonderful day.